Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of Triple Play. Don't forget to
like and subscribe, share.
Yeah,
I got you.
Got share. Yep, and support if you can. We love those little $3 supports. Those help out a ton, and building those up is key for us to continue to grow. The other thing, don't forget to support those that support us, or don't hesitate to reach out to Resource One and Andy McCollum at 636-458-1798 and CS Design at 573-436-3717. And with that said, today, Scott, you're the guest. Yes, it is all about Scott.
Man, yeah. I was asked to take part in the Taste of St. Louis downtown. I guess a bunch of food vendors pay some money to showcase what they got. They bring their food trucks, all their stuff, and I got to go on stage and cook my grandmother's Syrian dish.
Well, cool. Let's rewind here. So, had you ever gone to St. Louis, the Taste of St. Louis before? Was this your first time?
It was my first time. I thought I went maybe like 10 years ago, but I guess it was a different food fair.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. And then, obviously, you had your dish. Was it one that you said your grandma, did she teach it to you, or did it get passed on like your mom to you?
Yeah, so my grandmother was Syrian, and so she, when her family came over here, brought Syrian food, and it was called kibbeh. So it's basically it's like ground beef, different types of beef. Then you put a little wheat germ in it.
Okay.
Salt and pepper. And then there is a spice, and then a little bit of pomegranate.
Awesome.
Juice. Yeah.
Mix
it all up and layer it, and then I call it like a meatloaf. Just meat. It's not no bread, no nothing. Just basically meat. And
so when I was watching, these guys are going to see some videos. So we're going to put up a clip here of you being introduced by Chuck, mm-hmm. and talking a little bit about your sports, and then we'll come back in a second because I want to ask you a few things about your dish.
Okay.
If you're just joining us here, Scott, this is Scott Van Slyke, and
I got food too.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about. So that's what I originally asked Scott, because I was like, there's so much heritage. You have a lot of heritage in your family, and I'm like, there's probably some sort of special dish or some kind of thing that that it's like a very family thing, and then.
Okay, so about your dish, I noticed a lot of people are starting to come up and test it. Did you have any left over?
I had a little bit left over. I think that was due to time. It would have gone. I think people enjoyed it. I think it's not like a ethnic dish where you think of maybe it being so far removed from like an American dish, where maybe you think of like an Ethiopian dish or something. It's not really like that. It really is just, it's like meat and a little different type of grain and like a little bit of sweet and salt. So I think people enjoyed that. I also did bring it's a paste, apricot paste.
Okay.
And so it's like a little bit of a dessert. It's like Laffy Taffy, but it's fruit Laffy Taffy.
Really?
Yeah.
Never had that.
Yeah, it's really good. I think that was gone. People started figuring out that was good and started to come and take that. But it was interesting. I guess it's a food fair, but since the recent laws have changed in Missouri, they were cooking with cannabis.
Yeah.
As well. So it was like food, but then also you were getting whiffs of that all in the air, and it was just kind of a.
So not only were people enjoying their food, but they were enjoying a little bit of a high too.
Yeah, so for example, I looked it up after. So apparently there's a my apricot paste. It comes in this big sheet, and it's like an orange sheet. It's apricot. So it was sitting on the table, and these girls come up and like get on stage, and they're like, "What we got? What kind of weed we got here?" And so they thought we were like cutting this like special wax for them, because there's a tent right next to us that was doing that. And so we had you watched enough video that you see random people come up on stage and I'm like, what are you doing?
That's great.
Yeah.
That very unexpected, right?
Yeah. It was, I think Chuck was a little bit kind of was like, I don't know that. But it was fun. It was whatever.
Yeah, it sounded like a lot of fun. So we'll show them a clip of a little bit of that, and then we'll get into a little more.
Okay.
So
little dish that maybe people that don't eat Arabic food can try. I mean, I could have brought it's called yebada, and you just wrap meat and all these types of things in this green lettuce when you eat it. So I don't think anybody wanted to try that.
Scott brought samples. If you want to sample his family dish,
We got some Syrian dessert too.
not really okay. So feel free to just come on up here if you want to give it a try. While I continue to.
So now we're back. I'll also put a couple pictures. We had some pictures of some people up on the stage too, so I'll put those up while we're talking here, so they can kind of see those. But yeah, it was that looked kind of wild. So it looked like Chuck did a pretty good job of talking to a couple of them and kind of making it a fun time.
It was good. I didn't know really what to expect. I knew when to show up and where to show up. So originally when I got on the stage, I originally was supposed to be, well, this is a funny story. So they had the grill, the oven, everything up. I was supposed to do like a live cooking show. And that morning I went out fishing with my son, and I was putting the bait on the hook, and my 2-year-old daughter ran across the driveway and snagged the line, and it pulled the hook, and it was in my middle finger. So I was in the ER all morning getting a fish hook out of my finger. And so I had a big bandage on there, so I couldn't end up cooking because of the blood and sanitary. And so I had my wife, gave her all the directions, and she cooked it. And so I just brought it pre-made. So that threw things off a lot. But Chuck luckily came. I was supposed to walk through everything, kind of host my own little show. And then I got there and I had this dish that was made. So I got up on stage and I was just, I had no idea what to talk about. I was like, hey, you guys want to come try some food? But then Chuck came in a couple of minutes and saved my butt.
That's yeah. Well, he's good at that. Yeah. I like Chuck a lot. Yeah. So
fun time. I didn't know what to expect, but it was a great time, and it was fun to see. I'd imagine and I only saw one little corner. There was another little corner that I didn't really get to see, but there's probably 5,000-10,000 people down just walking around, and so there was good energy, and it wasn't too hot out. It was a nice day, so next year, if you guys are looking for something to do, St. Louis, go to the St. Louis Taste of St. Louis. It's really fun. Yeah,
build a trip to it, right? If you're into food and you want to check everything all at one point, there you go. You can come to St. Louis, catch a Cardinal game, go check out Taste of St. Louis, and make it a little weekend if you're not in maybe the St. Louis area, but you want to check it out and have some fun.
Yeah.
So it'd be a good time. So all that said, we'll show another clip of the kind of the end of that, and then I got another question for you here.
Went to the Marlins for a little bit, then I went to South Korea, and then
So you played in South Korea?
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was very clean.
And when you say clean,
I mean just the ballpark. I mean, you go to the ballpark, there's no trash anywhere.
No fans throwing beer around or nothing.
Well, that's a different thing. So they have in their stands, they have different theme nights. So like one night might be like a fire department theme, and they'll bring fire hoses into the stadium, and throughout the games they'll just fire hose the fire hose section. So
really, you get
it's anything. There's fireworks night. If you want to get little sparklers, you go and you pay to participate in these pretty cool things in the stadium. So
is it a different culture like in baseball in South Korea?
Yeah, it's very.
I almost said North Korea. I'm like, no, that would be a really different culture. One that would not be good.
Don't swing and miss there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just there's not as much emphasis on having.
All right, so I got some pictures. I didn't get any clips, but I saw you were going around with this guy named Gary, Mr. Gary from Them Yo People.
Yeah.
So
I forgot about that.
What was that all about?
So Gary, if you're not from St. Louis, you're not going to quite understand this, and even my wife, Audrey, who grew up in St. Louis, never heard of Gary, but. For a fan, when you see the video, I'm like, man, Gary, it's so great to meet you. That's like genuine. Like growing up in St. Louis, late nights, if you can't sleep, I would go to my cousin's house, and so they would go out, and I'd be at home alone with from like 10 to midnight, and Gary would come on, and Gary would be at some random event in St. Louis, at some fair or festival or whatever, and he'll go to it, and he'll just walk around and talk to people, interview them, like you mentioned, he has that show, Them Yo People. So I was genuinely excited to meet Gary. I've been watching him on TV, and I mentioned on camera, I said, when your face comes on TV, when your show's on, I watch it until the show's over. It's no matter what. So like, I don't know what your favorite show is. We'll just say it's whatever, Friends. If Friends comes on, even if it's your favorite show, you might not. You'll be like, I've seen this one before. When Gary comes on, I watch Gary.
I'm kind of that way with Seinfeld. I cannot stop watching. I mean, I can watch it 100 times and I'm still laughing at the same jokes and the same things with Kramer. So I get it.
So that's Gary for me. For me personally, Gary is that he just is entertaining.
That's awesome. So you had a good time. You got to check out a guy that you kind of loved the check, and you didn't even know he was going to be there. So what a cool thing. I'll put up a couple pictures so they can see that while we're doing it. So bottom line, did you get to have any other food? Did you try out any other food while you're there?
No, I did not. I have a sensitive stomach.
Okay.
So I'm just I like to know the hands that prepared my food.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and you've had a few things lately, so I get it. Mm-hmm. So, but I was just curious because sometimes, it's fun to try out that kind of stuff. On the other hand, I can't imagine, if there might be a little bit of cannabis in there, might really, like a guy like me who's never had it, I'm sure, I remember going to concerts as a kid, and I would, because I was never around it, so I didn't build any tolerance. So even being around it, I'd go to like a Lollapalooza or whatever, and I'd be like buzzing a little bit, a little feel-gooey, woo!
In the air, I think. Yeah, but it was fun. I had a really great time. I would suggest going to that if you have the opportunity next time it's around town.
Awesome. Well, I did talk to Chuck, and if he's doing it next year, if it's not passed off to somebody else and he's the man putting it all together, we're going to get him on the show and talk a little bit more. Well, we'll get back to talking about you guys. We'll talk about, the upcoming show, some of the things he might be having there. But, it sounded like a really good time. I'm sorry I missed it, man.
Yeah, it was fun. And we also got to meet... I don't know if she was the chief editor or the president or the owner, but we met a magazine. I want to say it wasn't Esquire. It was a St. Louis magazine that you would recognize. I bet you have it in here. I'll think of it. We'll put it in the notes. But we got to meet her, and she was cool. She came up on stage. She's the lady at the end. I
think I know who you're talking about. I think we got a couple pictures of her up there too. So
she was a good meet. She was cool. I told her that's just one of those things. You go to St. Louis event, you're like, you're that? Like, I read that every time I go get a haircut. Like, that's the magazine I pick. So
it's everywhere you go, they have it. Yeah.
So it was fun.
Well, cool, man. Well, thanks for sharing. Yeah. For those listening, we hope you enjoyed the clips and heard a little bit about Taste of St. Louis, and maybe it'll pique your curiosity. You'll check it out next year. Support our buddy Chuck. He's an awesome guy, and I've always heard great things about Taste of St. Louis. So that's amazing. I might have to check it out next year.
Yeah, you should. So. We'll go back. Maybe we'll get another spot, and I'll actually be able to cook this year, not hook myself.
You can cook. I can ask some questions.
Have you ever hooked your finger by a fishing hook?
More time, man. I was 6 kids, and we used to do it every weekend. We had that little pond by Jeremiah. Mm-hmm. Man, I'd go there and I'd fish it all day long with my kids, and it would just, tear it up. Or lake, when the lake before it drained the second time when it had a bunch of fish for a while there, This is fun. I'm thinking of all these things. I went to the ER. Yeah.
And I got it hooked, and I knew. I mean, it felt like it was touching my bone. It was really deep. So I didn't touch it, didn't move it. I walked in. They let me go in because it was emergency. Yeah, I was like that. And there was a worm was still on the hook. And so I just walk around the ER with like a little rubber worm moving around my finger, and I sat down, and they took it out, and they're like, "Man, that was really easy to take out." They're like, I was like, this is my hand position. I haven't moved it since. I haven't touched it. And she's like, that's very good. We had one of our staff members do this a few days ago, and he tried to get it out, and he snipped it, and he made it way worse. It was the doctor. It was the guy he's the guy that hooked it. So I found that out, and I was watching him. Like, I think you could tell he was like, man, I wish I would have just left it alone with like this guy
and just come in.
So that was another little thing that happened.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I've never been hooked that deep, but I've had a couple in me in weird spots too. I had my son, the last one, we were down at the lake, and my son went to cast it, and this was just summer, and he caught my daughter. So he went to cast it, and he caught her, and I had to kind of wiggle it out of her. I thought, oh,
I gotta find the video. My dad did a show in like the 92 or 93. In spring training, he took me and my older brother out on a fishing trip with like a local bass pro, and they filmed it. And like halfway through, you see, and the guy's got a camera at the stern at the boat, and he's just recording it all. And my brother, you see him go like this, and he does that, and you hear my dad, and he goes. And then he makes that noise, and then you see my brother like 4 or 5 times. He's like, "Why isn't this thing going?" My dad's like, "Ow!" It was really. I gotta find that clip. Oh,
yeah,
man.
we'll have to find it. If we find it before this goes out, we'll throw it at the end as a little blooper or something, because that's awesome.
It's out there. It's on VHS. I don't know if it's digitalized.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, thanks for listening in. We hope that you enjoyed, and don't forget to
all the things, like, subscribe. Share.
All of it. Yeah. Share.
Whatever you can do.
Yep. Support. And we will catch you next episode.
Find out.
Where can we find? We've had scientists on there. We've had a lady that was dealt with shooting with her children, with a child at school. Wow. We've had everybody on there. So and early on, I don't know if anybody out there started a podcast and had to get audio and all that stuff, but early on, our first 5 or 10 podcasts, the audio, as we were working things out, have gotten better. So if you are listening, you're like, man, I can't listen to this. Just go further down the line. The audio gets better.
So the podcast is called Triple Play, and we can find it on what platform?
Anywhere.
Okay.
Anywhere. Just
I think
anywhere.
I'm seeing it on
Google, you'll find it.
I think it's where
YouTube,
yeah.
Spotify, Rumble, like anywhere.
Yeah, good. And then, is there a favorite interview you've done so far, or somebody that you would say, hey, if you're going to start off with one of my podcasts, this would be the one that...
Well, so I'm a little bit of a science geek, so in my free time now, I study biomechanics, biology, we talk about sports, culture, faith. Early on, it's really just about anybody we can get on our podcast. Anybody that says yes, we get on as we get this thing going. But we center it around our worldview, which is my Christian faith. And then we talk about sports. We talk about
there's current events, right?
Literally anything that seems interesting to talk about, or an interesting person, we'll get them on there and we'll get it out of them. So,
well, you've interviewed some pretty interesting people. At least that's what I mean from the episodes that I've kind of tuned into.
I have to remember his name, but
You're safe.